Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning, TC. How are you?
A little tired, but I'm here. How are y'all?
Good. So, Jamie, this is TC. TC, this
Hi,
is
TC.
Jamie. He's probably doing some stuff on the backside, so he's out for a second.
I'm a
But
pineapple.
happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
It's on a Saturday. The kids can stay out.
And you know what else is weird about today?
Full moon. Blue.
Yeah, but yes, and more so, the last two full moons the last blue moon that fell on the Halloween was like early 1942 or something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Good morning, Carrie. So I have my Halloween nails on today.
Look at that. Aren't you fancy? I have my Halloween mask on, as you can see.
Yeah, mine.
This is my sheet talking costume. Do you approve?
It's good. It's good.
So, everybody, this is my good friend TC. TC and I met several years ago. That was 2010. That's so funny.
She knew.
And we used to kickbox together. And let me tell you a funny story. They were trying to partner us up, and so they partnered me up with TC, and I'm like, she'll be fine. Anyway, the woman kicks like a horse and bruised my arm and my rib cage, and I'm like, please never again put me with her. So anyway, TC,
I thought you didn't like me and stuff like that. I was like, what's wrong with this chick? I didn't do nothing to her.
I just didn't want you to kick me anymore. You kick like a horse. So anyway, tell us a little bit about you, how you became a crime junkie, and what I've called you a scary movie buff, because I feel like you watch too many scary movies.
I've seen my share of them for sure. I probably started watching them when I should not have been watching them. I've just always had a thing for scary movies. One of my older brothers always used to watch them, and so there I was. The first ones I watched was the Nightmare on Elm Street ones, and then of course your Halloween's, Friday the 13th, and then I came across Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The first time I watched the first one from 1974, it was when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and my parents were watching it, so I caught the end of it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, what's this about?" And they're just talking about how it was based on a true story that happened outside of Dallas and whatnot, and so, anyways, it just kind of went from there, and I watched pretty much all the cult classics, and then your corny ones and some very disturbing ones that are banned, and all of that. And of course, I grew up watching Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted and all those crime shows. I mean,
what's your favorite goofy one?
Goofy one? Reno 911.
Memorable one.
Reno 911, but that's not really a crime one. That's just a silly one.
Oh, I was thinking horror movie. I was like, that doesn't sound like horror.
Well, it could be.
I love that show.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I hear there's a spiritual sequel to it. One about a fire department.
Yeah, I think there is.
I can't remember. It's something FD. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as favorite scary movie, goodness, I couldn't pick just one. No, definitely not.
That's awesome. So TC's going to be on here, guys. It's going to be a little bit of a different show, the format that we have, because TC has to work, and so she's going to hop off about 11:30. And so today's episode, we're going to talk about the Texas. Did I say Texas?
Texas. What'd you eat for breakfast? Texas.
Oh my God. We're gonna edit that in post. Is it post production? So we're gonna discuss the Texas Chainsaw Massacre versus the real Ed Gein. And so let's jump into this, just because we are already cutting into your time, TC. So about the Texas Chainsaw Massacres. Oh, but before we do that, Jamie, can you pop up a list of the movies that were based on Ed Gein? And I didn't realize before looking into this how many movies were based on Ed Gein. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the only one that I thought had ever been listed as one. But yeah, I was super shocked when I saw a total of 10 movies. So guys, in the comments, if you guys can put in like what all you have seen, and I'd like to see.
Not sure why it didn't. It's showing it. Hold on.
Is it behind a little?
No, it's acting like it doesn't want to play it at all.
Oh, really? That's weird.
But I can see it on my side.
Huh.
Let's try this way. There we go.
Okay, so all the movies that are loosely based on this are going to be Psycho. TC, how many Texas Chainsaw Massacres? Because I only found those 3, but you said something crazy like
Part A, Part B. Yeah, there's the original one from 1974. There's Part 2, and then there's Part 3, which is called Leatherface, which came out in 1990. And then you have the Next Generation, the one that I told you I didn't like because I didn't like how it started off. And then you have the remake from 2003, and then one in 2006. Then you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, and then Leatherface in 2017. So that's
crazy.
Yeah. They just keep doing it.
I know. I'm like, okay, so you didn't get it right the first 10 times. Let's just stop. So anyway, Silence of the Lambs, 3 on a Meat Hook, Deranged, Ed and His Dead Mother, Child of God, Motel Hell, Hannibal, and Leatherface. So I'm going to shock everybody. I've not watched any of these. Okay.
No surprise.
None of them, Sandy? You haven't seen one of them?
No. I did see that Deranged, the one that was in 1974, is the closest one to True Life. So.
Okay.
Joanne wants to know what I drank for breakfast. Joanne, coffee must have been a little bit stronger than normal.
They put Irish cream in it.
Yeah, I know.
No, she put some of that Texas in there.
Yeah, Texas. Oh, and Carrie's talking about that Geico commercial. Yes. They're like, let's get in the running car. And they're like, let's go over here to this. And it has all the dangling knives and everything in there.
I like that commercial.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So anyway, okay, TC, tell us about Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay, well, the first one came out in 1974, and it starts off with a group of friends, and they're going to visit their old homestead. And the reason why is because there were reports of vandalism and grave robbing, so they wanted to go and see what all of that was about. Then this crazy hitchhiker comes along, they pick him up, and of course, you know how the rest goes. Here comes, the chasing them and doing all this, and they all start dying one by one. And then here comes Leatherface and wielding the chainsaw and all his fun stuff and all his glory. And
wielding what?
His chainsaw and all his glory.
Sorry, I had to turn that off.
Yeah, there you go. And the second part is more of a comedy than it is scary. And of course, it just continues to follow the whole. Here's this cannibalistic family stalking its victims and whatnot. And
is that the one on the radio show? It takes place in a
It's these 2 kids start harassing this DJ, and that's how it goes in there. And then that Leatherface, which came out in 1990, again, it just starts with them stalking unsuspecting people on the road and whatnot. And then they have a remake in 2003, and then in 2006. The one in 2006 goes more, it's like a prequel of how Leatherface came to be and all of that. So it turns out he was abandoned as a kid, and then he was found and raised by that cannibalistic family, which in the original ones, they're the Sawyer family, but in the remake, they're renamed the Hewitt family. And then it goes to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, which goes into it's focused on this girl named Heather, which turns out she was adopted, and she turns out to be a cousin of Leatherface. And then the one Leatherface in 2017, it turns out his name is Jedediah Sawyer, but they rename him Jackson. And now the end of that one is crazy because he forms his first mask, and then he's applying lipstick, and then he sees his reflection and he smashes it. So all of this, the way I say it all ties back to Ed is because, of course, the cannibalism And in all the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, you see furniture made of human bones, and of course, Leatherface wearing other people's faces and whatnot.
What do they call that? Upcycling, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Ashley Saeed that we had on the show would be so proud.
Young lad. And also, there's a backstory about Leatherface was that he was adopted by a family who had wanted a daughter, and so that he was forced to dress in drag, and so therefore he ended up having gender issues. And so that's another thing that ties back to Ed because he was obsessed with, I guess, being like his mom or becoming like his mom, which of course also goes into that whole thing with the Psycho movies with what was his name? Norman
Bates, yeah.
Look at this comment from Carrie. Jedediah sounds too biblical, so we're going to call you Jex.
Good point.
Jedediah.
And TC, that reminds me also campfire something or campground getaway. Anyway, at the end of the movie, which is crazy, there's someone killing all the campers, and then you find out it's one of the gals from the girls' dormitory or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the end of the movie, the reveal is that the girl has a penis, and you see her history, and it turns out what you were just saying, like the mother wanted a daughter, and so when she had a son, she would treat him like a girl always, and he had.
Yeah, it is.
And these are all on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre ones, TC?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess loosely based. I mean, they did pull bits and pieces from what it sounds like. Like I said, I've never watched
a good one, Sandy.
Literally bits and pieces.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. I apologize.
Oh shoot, TC froze on us.
Okay, am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Good deal.
Okay, so Leatherface was on its own, but it was still part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Yes, so definitely. Okay. I think they just kind of did his own movies just kind of to give a background of himself and to focus on him and his issues. So,
okay. And what about, I know that you said you watched Hannibal, right?
It's been a while, but
okay. So what from that movie would you say was pulled from about Ed Gein's life?
The cannibalism and just the disturbing.
Okay, I was just trying to go through the list and see, which one was, more closely based. Because honestly, just hearing from what you're saying about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I mean, there's like just. For lack of a better phrase, bits and pieces. So, I mean, honestly, it was touted that it was one of the closely related, and then it ended up kind of blowing up because it wasn't. I mean, and it wasn't even based out of Texas. So, but I know that there was something that was based out of Childress. Was it more closely related to that? Would you say?
I'm sorry, you cut out just a while ago.
Oh, shoot. Would you say that it was closely related to something that happened in Childress? Because I know that they based it out of Texas, but Ed was based out of Wisconsin.
Right. And then they did this one. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre supposedly happened somewhere outside of the Dallas area. And why they did that, I'm not sure. But it was just, like you said, bits and pieces that inspired the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I would say the movies closest to the Ed situation would be Psycho, for sure.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about Psycho, because what's in that one?
What I remember is just Bateman and his mom, their close relationship, and
that's just the one about
he had some sort of.
Yeah, so in Psycho, basically, there's the guy and his mother who live in the main house, mansion, whatever. And there's a hotel off to the side. People come and stay in the hotel. Some people leave. Not all people do, though. Other people get killed, and then they get put somewhere else. So the kicker is that mom is the one doing all the killing, and Norman is the one who's telling her, stop doing it. I like this girl, and da-da-da-da, and all this stuff, and it's real good. Anyway, you get to the end and you see Mom finally, because throughout the movie you see Mom in the chair, in the window, and the lightning and everything else. And then when they go to find her, they'll be like, she's been here. What have you been doing? And they turn her around. It's her dead body. The whole movie, she's been dead. And Norman has been taking on his mom's persona because she used to abuse him. And he's been killing all these people with this, almost with this dissociative personality disorder, basically.
I gotcha.
It's good though.
So I think I've told y'all a couple of times. We did a haunted jail tour when we were in Charleston one year, and the couple that was really famous for being in that jail was a couple that owned a hotel, and I don't know if it's one of those folklore now that I think about it, but they made it seem like it was real. What they would do is they would set people up at their hotel, and they would, she would bring them like some sort of soup or something. And those that ate it, of course, never made it out. Turned out they had a huge mass grave back behind their hotel and stuff. And anyway, so she was the first woman in South Carolina to be hanged. And, whatchamacallit. And so anyway, so part of the history of the jail was that she went to death row to be hanged in her wedding dress, because one of their obscure laws saying that if she got married, she wouldn't be able to be hanged. So good morning, Renee. Happy birthday. She's having mimosas in bed this morning.
That sounds good.
I know, she's doing it right. Oh, I know. Usually I spoil everything, but I can't spoil any of these movies. But anyway, so I'm trying to think. And did we say something about Silence of the Lambs? Is that the one that says, hello, Clarice? Jamie, you're muted.
Sorry, yes. That's the one with the serial killer that they catch, and they're trying to find what's his name? Oh, I can't remember the other guy's name, but they're trying to find him, and Clarice is asking Hannibal Lecter for No, wait, I'm getting them all confused now.
I know, they all look alike.
TC, help us out with this one, because now I'm confused.
It's been a while since I watched Silence of the Lambs. Oh man.
What is this? I can't even.
I'm looking it up real quick.
Is this the one that has the face through the door, or is that something totally separate that doesn't even relate to any of these movies?
Oh yeah, so they're looking for Buffalo Bill in this one.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it is the one. Silence of the Lambs is the one. Okay, so I'm right. Yeah, so that's the one where they're going to look. They're getting Hannibal Lecter's help in finding Buffalo Bill, who's sort of like a copycat, and so he's getting in her head. And it's Jodie Foster who's the main. She's Clarice in there, and so Anthony Hopkins. That's the guy's name. And so she keeps going back to Anthony Hopkins' cell to get basically like they're profiling Buffalo Bill so they can catch him. And a lot of his the way he kills people or who he gets, young women and things like that. So,
okay, and so and I'm going to discuss like in depth here about Ed Gein, but just so you know, it never mentioned that he used a chainsaw in any of the research that I did. Not once was it mentioned that he used a chainsaw, and he could have. And here's Eric saying it sounds like Murder Castle. Yeah, just on a cheap budget because Murder Castle was expensive. And I knew that Eric had said Buffalo Bill, and as he said Buffalo Bill from Joe Dirt.
I don't know what Joe Dirt is.
And then Carrie says, you know what's so funny is I think that's one of those
that's a Mandela effect.
Mandela effect. Yeah.
Are you sure about that, Carrie? That came from the other universe. In my universe, he said it.
Yeah, and I've never watched any movies, but how do I know that he said that, Carrie?
Because you came from the other universe too.
Yeah, probably more than likely. So, TC, anything else you want to add before you hop off? Because I don't want to keep you from. I don't want you to be late, be fired on your day off. Well, you're not.
No, definitely not. No, I don't think I have anything else. I just wanted to give a little brief background on the Chainsaw movies and what.
Yes.
Oh no, I just did when you.
Like, do you have more? Because I interrupted you. I'm sure I did.
No, you're fine. No, it's just obviously they were just inspired bits and pieces, like you said, from the Ed case, and of course, none of it really happened like that. Like, they just put all those disclaimers, like, "Oh, this really happened outside of Dallas," and whatnot.
Did they put those disclaimers after the fact? They had to come clean on it, or how did that happen?
Well, they did it before the movie starts, and then even in part 2, they did the same thing as well. And so, yeah.
Okay, so they didn't. Okay, for some reason, I guess I thought they had been like busted, and then they started saying, "Oh, it wasn't put on there." Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty much the relation I see with the whole Ed case and the Chainsaw Massacre movies was, of course, the cannibalism, the human furniture, and wearing, of course, people's skin. So he was, I guess you could say he was literally wearing Tiffany or something like that.
Eric, I don't want that kind of Tiffany, okay?
So, TC, let me ask you real quick, just a side note kind of question here is, do you have an opinion on the idea of making scary movies out of real life murders and, you know what I mean? Real life situations. So like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre case, do you have an opinion on making a movie off of a person who committed pretty crazy crimes in real life?
Honestly, I wouldn't want to do something like that. No.
I hope not. If you do, don't put me on your list, okay? Or if I am, then put me at the very bottom, very bottom.
We'll see what
put some other people on top.
All right, okay? I'll see what I can do.
Like, I feel like when you do movies like this, and if there's still family alive, I feel like that would be, one of those where you cross the line. But again, I mean, the documentaries I'm okay with, which is really weird, but I'm not okay with the movies. What is my disconnect? Can somebody help me? Can somebody help me understand myself? So Joanne says she watched Texas Chainsaw by herself. No one wanted to see it. Her boyfriend was too scared.
What?
And I don't know what
that would be me now.
Why I don't watch it. I guess because it's not real. I want it to be real, I guess. I don't know.
What? Did you say you wanted it to be real?
I want it to be real, like for real, based on it. Don't be like loosely basing and making stuff up.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I understand what you meant. So
yeah,
documentary stuff is okay, not movies that are embellishing too much.
Well, because here when I get into this, like it's crazy. The stuff that he did is totally like you couldn't even make it up in Hollywood. That's how bad it is, Does that make sense? So Carrie says, so maybe the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a Mandela effect because I've always thought it was a true story. No. You're right. It was presented as a true story, but it's not. It is totally not. And Eric and I had thought prior to this that it happened in Childress. There was something that happened in Childress because I watched it on Bailey Sarian, but I can't remember what it was. But I don't think it involved a chainsaw. I'll have to look at her, rewatch that one. But I know that there was something that happened there. So
in the movie, Childress is mentioned in the movie as the location with the nearest payphone.
Oh, really?
That's about it.
Childress with the nearest payphone, huh? I wonder if Childress still has that same payphone.
Right? I'm reading other stuff, so.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on Ed Gein. So these movies are horrible, but they don't, like I just said earlier, they don't compare to Ed Gein. So who was Ed? So let's go back to July 7th, 1900, because that's the day that Ed's parents were married. Okay. So George and Augusta are his mom and dad, and they were a very seemingly odd couple, and they were married for 40 years. They fought constantly, and Augusta was condescending and domineering to George, and he was already an alcoholic, and so Georgia did not make it. Augusta, listen to me, Georgia. Just making names up, whatever. Augusta didn't make it any easier. She was very condescending and domineering. And but despite all that, they still managed to have their first son, Henry. And Augusta did not bond with Henry, and she prayed for a daughter. So then let's cue Edward Theodore Gein. And Augusta felt betrayed by the Lord, but later embraced Ed. She vowed that he would not grow up like the other lustful, foul-mouthed males. She was sure he would be different. And this, when I read this, I was like, oh man, be careful what you wish for, because he was very different. It has been said that Gein endured a difficult childhood. His mother was verbally abusive to him, but he idolized her. He was also outraged. We might need to mute TC. There you go. She was also outraged by loose women and all the loose morals of the world around her. She believed all women were whores sent by the devil, except for her.
Except for her.
Except for her. She was God's gift to George. Ed was bullied at school, and his mom refused to let him make friends as she was desperate to protect him from the outsiders she saw as sinners. Ed was said to have been shy, quiet, and socially awkward. He came home crying from school, and his dad beat him so hard across the head that his ears began to ring. They called it trauma-induced vertigo. He graduated from the 8th grade and dropped out. This was the norm back in the day. In 1915, Augusta sold a grocery store that they owned, and she purchased a 155-acre farm. So the reason she sold the store was to get them out of the city so that they wouldn't be tempted by the temptations and all the flesh of the women that were out there. So Gein's father died in 1940. Ed was 34 at the time. Augusta made sure to tell the boys that he was in hell. I mean, this woman just sounds like a winner all the way around.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah, she badmouthed him while he was still alive, and now after he was dead, he was still being badmouthed. So Henry and Ed went to town. They went to work into town to help support the mom and themselves, and it made them have to socially interact. And this is what was really interesting. Ed was asked to babysit children.
Oh, that's right. I heard about that.
Yeah. They said he and Henry were very well liked. And the crazy part is when you think about it, it's like, how is that even possible, you know? But I guess at this point, he was still able to maintain an image and function. I guess he let me not get ahead of myself. So in 1942, Ed had to travel to Milwaukee to get a draft physical. He failed because of his lazy eye. And that was another thing that he was bullied. Apparently he had like this flesh, kind of like a, what do they call, like a skin tag? He had like a little skin tag that made his eye droopy. And so he got bullied for that. And anyway, so he failed because of this lazy eye that he had. So this trip was exciting and terrifying, as this would be the furthest that he would ever travel. And just on a side note, I looked and they only ever confirmed 2 murders that for Ed Gein, and he's known as a serial killer, but that wouldn't be, I mean, anything serial killer-ish to me. I mean, what do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, excuse me. It's not serial killers. And remember, we were talking about this last week a little bit, and I had looked up some of the things that not quoted, but kind of what makes a serial killer. And there's basically a list of things, and you have to meet like I think they said at least three, maybe four of those items to be considered a serial killer. Now, I would say that's more of today's definition.
Mm-hmm.
What's the guy's Holmes? You know, they didn't technically call him a serial killer, but there was a different word that they used in the newspaper. But it was a term derived from the newspaper, not on anything that the FBI or police at that time or anyone professionally would have said, yes, this is a serial killer. It was more of a term that was made later. So I think if we applied those same terms today to then, I don't necessarily think he's a serial killer after only having two murders, because I think one of those things was there was a number of murders that they had to have within a month. So in 1 month you have to have X amount of murders, and even if we made it low, 3, I still don't know that he does it. But I think the kicker is all the other stuff that he did. Plus, that's only what they could find was 2.
Right. And there were several different, I mean, because I looked at several different websites to look for some of this stuff, and some of them said that there was like lots of missing people that they thought he was connected to, but they never pegged him to him. So
yeah,
anyway.
And he never confessed to any of them except the one that he was put on trial for.
Right.
And even then, he was found criminally insane.
Right. So Carrie said, Matt says that the disconnect, you like 100.
That the disconnect is you like 100% fact and 0. Okay, you kind of started slowing down there.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
I
thought you maybe got cut off too, and I was like, I'm by myself. Oh, you're just cut it out, Sandy. The camera's, you're getting stuck at certain parts.
Okay. Oh no.
Uh-oh. Eric is saying, I read that the actual movie house is somewhere around San Antonio.
My bad.
And something's going on with Sandy, so we'll give it a second for her to kind of, maybe she just needs to cut out and get back in, and close all her browsers too, and then we'll see if that helps her out. Until then, I'll read some of these comments and try to follow along with what Sandy was doing. Carrie said, that gal sounds like the Black Sheep Sanderson sister who went dark. Hocus Pocus. You know, on a little side note with that Hocus Pocus, I heard recently that Hocus Pocus beat out in the movie theaters, or made more money than Tenet did when it came out. That's because everyone's going to watch older movies because the movie theaters have nothing new to show. Carrie also said, number one way to know you are a serial killer, is that really scientific? Yeah. My kids are banging upstairs and it's starting to annoy me right now.
My back?
She's not back yet. She's still cutting out. Sandy, you're cutting out. I'm not sure what else is going on besides network connection. Oh, go take your phone off Wi-Fi and connect to your phone again. That's what we need to do. All right. So while Sandy does that and gets us back, guys, I'm going to just take this on another side for a minute, since, this is her big deal, but just to fill the tear up. So listen, like the whole idea of, I remember watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and I thought it was good and I used to love it and enjoyed it. But then as with all the scary movies these days, I had kids and I can't handle any more scary movies. That's why it's hard enough for me to deal with the true crime stuff, because I don't know what, but all of a sudden I saw these kids who were dying in these movies as my daughters, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's just too much for me to handle now, and so I can't do it. But I remember watching all the scary movies. I remember watching all the Texas Chainsaw Massacres back before 2008, maybe 2006. And I could handle it all. And I remember when my wife was in the hospital with our first baby, and there was this huge horror movie bonanza going on at the movie theaters, and I would go over there and watch them. So, but yeah, I'm a big chicken now when it comes to it. But tell me in the comments, and tell Sandy, what are some of your favorite scary movies to watch, considering this is Halloween too, and I'm definitely trying to fill up some air until Sandy gets back. Because I did listen about Ed Gein this morning. I did listen to a couple podcasts and just kind of get some feel from him. But the guy was definitely, I admit he had some challenges in his childhood and his school life. He had some challenges over. Oh, here she is. Hold on.
I swear I'm so over this.
So turn it sideways if you can.
Sideways.
Yeah, that way we get more of you. There we go.
Okay.
Much better.
I'm so over this internet. I really am.
Well, maybe that's something you won't have to worry about too much longer, right? Maybe.
Well, the thing is they came and put in a new box. That's the bad part of it.
Well, we have proof that it's not working 2 weekends in a row.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So where was I?
I've got to admit, I'm sorry. I can't remember that one.
Okay. So
serial killers. The last thing I remember what we were talking about.
Okay. So I remember
definition.
Now.
Okay.
So Ed Gein's father died in 1940, and Ed was 34 at the time. So he's never moved out of his house. Okay. And so anyway, so they go to town and they're working, and he goes to Milwaukee to get a draft physical, and he fails because of his lazy eye. And this was the only exciting and terrifying trip that he would ever actually go on. So around the same time, Henry, the oldest brother, he starts scandalously. Can't even say that word.
Yep. Scandalously sounds great.
Forget it.
Now you got me saying it wrong.
Scandalously.
So
he starts dating a single mom, and he also begins to remark about his mother's control over them and the strange attachment Ed and
Mom had.
And his mom have. And he spoke with Ed about it, but it only upset Ed that Henry would talk to him like this. So in 1944, Henry dies a suspicious death. Ed and Henry were burning brush around the farm, and Henry goes missing. So there's several different versions of Henry's death, but most agree that it wasn't an accident. He did have some suspicious bruising, but ultimately they said he died of smoke inhalation. So this just leaves Ed and his mom. And let's see what happens to Ed and his mom. So not long after Henry's death, Augusta had a stroke and had to be hospitalized. When she returns home, she's noticed that Ed has picked up some rather interesting reading material regarding human anatomy, grave robbing, and how to shrink heads. She did not approve of this reading material.
Shrink heads, huh?
Is that a thing? Is shrinking heads real?
So here's a little I know about it, is that it's a practice done in, I want to say, South American tribes. Somehow they do that. And that it was on Beetlejuice.
Okay, that's the only shrinking head thing that I can say is Beetlejuice. And that's when you sprinkle something on him.
Because he went from like number 3 to number 8 billion something, yada, yada, yada.
So anyway, in 1945, his mother dies, and he became a hermit. So he creates a shrine by blocking off most of the area she used. He left her room spotless and untouched. He continues to do odd jobs in town to support himself. This is when it appears that he has mental health issues. He starts to live in squalor, and people notice that he's really unkept as far as his clothing goes, and he starts really smelling bad. And so right here, you would be like, okay, modern times, Ed is depressed, right?
That's what I would think.
That's what I think, right? So what does Ed do with his depression? Well,
he funnels it somewhere.
Huh?
He funnels it into something.
He does. He becomes really productive. He picks up more reading materials like violent comic books, crime magazines, and stuff about Nazi death camps. The community starts noticing his unkept clothing, and Ed begins to hallucinate. And out of fear of these hallucinations, he starts visiting his mother's grave, and he goes to visit her pretty regularly. And he didn't want to go back home without his mom. So what he did is he digs up her grave, and he twists off the head and takes it back home. So that he doesn't have to be alone.
So let me say some of this real quick. After hearing some of the stuff that Ed does and hearing and remembering what mom did to him, from the little that I know, it sounds very much like a little bit of paranoid schizophrenia, or just schizophrenia, probably not paranoid. A little bit of schizophrenia. There's a little bit of OCD. And those things come out because in schizophrenia, when you start just detaching from reality, the hallucinations can be a part of that. Schizophrenia, hallucinations are definitely part of that. Your OCD, we think OCD a lot of times in these days, like, oh, people who are clean freaks, people who just want to keep clean. That's not what OCD is. Think of OCD as a big umbrella, and then that little clean piece is a part under there. But OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, that means you obsessively focus on one or number of things to where it disrupts your daily life. So, for example, there's people who've had to, when they turn off a light in a room and then they have to turn it on and turn off, they have to turn it on and off like an X number of times for them to feel like the world is going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so they obsess over that. So they have a form of OCD. People who run. So people can have all this stuff in different ways. People have to do an odd number of runs to feel like the world's going to be okay. Because when they don't do those things, something messes up. So for this guy, for not having his mom in there, that makes me think he is having some obsessive compulsory disorders because he can't stand not being with his mom, even though she was the one that abused him so much as a child.
Yeah.
And so then that part makes me think that's a little bit of, remember who we spoke to recently? Munchausen syndrome.
Yes.
So when you have, instead of looking at the person who is hurting you and you being the victim and them being the ones who are, I can't remember the word I'm thinking of, but instead you can't live life without them now.
Trauma bond.
Thank you. Trauma bond. And so you can't live life without that person who's abused you. And so all these things are totally, when I'm listening to them, I'm like, man, you can just start tacking on the mental health issues and disorders with him, it sounds like. And it's just like, golly. And then the physical pain, trauma that he got when he was being banged on the head, that whole vertigo feeling and all that stuff, the traumatic brain injuries, like that stuff isn't things that just happens to our vets and everything overseas, when they go through the roadside bombings and all. Yeah. But that traumatic brain injury is stuff that, it happens, and then things just start, your brain it's not staying wired the way it needs to be anymore. And so, man, the guy is heavy.
He's a walking textbook. I mean, you could get a lot of stuff from that guy.
Yeah.
I would like to invite OCD people to come clean my house. I'm just putting that out there. Anyway, so that's what I gathered from what you told me, Jamie. So anyway, after he twists her head off, his goal was to try to shrink her head. They didn't ever say if he was successful with that. So he begins to visit cemeteries in a dazed state. He dug up fresh corpses of middle-aged women that reminded him of his mother. Once he brought them home, he would pleasure himself over the bodies. He denied having relations with the corpses, but did remove the breast, nipples, and genital areas. Due to these actions, he would be classified as a necrophiliac. There was an increase in missing people, but they were never connected to Gein, although it did raise suspicion. Another controversial part about Ed is that he wanted to be a woman, and you and I both know that gender reassignment wasn't a thing back then. So he skinned the bodies of women. He dug up, processed the skin for softness and preservation, and he began making himself a woman suit. He would wear the suit late at night and walk around the farm late at night. And so I guess this is where you cue in Leatherface. So one day, Ed started frequenting Pine Grove Tavern, who was owned by Mary Hogan. And Mary reminded him very much of his mother, except that she was really foul-mouthed and she lived a very wild life. 3 years later, Mary went missing from her pub. They found a bullet casing and blood on the floor. And Ed would tell people, she's not missing. She's hung up at my house. And people would just brush him off as a harmless oddball.
Carrie says she would like you to come clean her house.
Carrie, I wish I was OCD. I'd come clean.
Do you guys have friends like that though? That like when you invite them over and they just will clean, they'll just start cleaning stuff, and you're talking, you're like, just leave it though, and they're like, oh, it's fine. And I have a friend who's like that, and when she comes over to the house,
Really?
yes, and Cindy, you remember Cindy?
Yeah.
The massage therapist.
Yes.
So when her and her family will come over, or she brings the boys over before things, yeah, she would just start washing my dishes, putting my dishes up, cleaning my counter, everything. I'd be like, Cindy, chill out. You just hang out. We're just letting the kids play or whatever. And she'd be like, oh no, it's okay. And then she'd just keep talking and putting and I'm like,
okay, so friends of mine, I'm gonna need y'all to improve a little bit. I've got dishes that need to be washed. Just kidding.
Just kidding.
So anyway, back to Ed.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have friends that cleaned his house. I'll tell you why in just a minute.
Oh gosh.
So in 1957, Ed walked into Warden's, which was a local store there, and it was run by Bernice Warden, and he was looking to purchase antifreeze. So the next day, the police would notice that Warden's was still locked and that Warden's truck was missing. When they gained access, they found a pool of blood on the floor, and Bernice's quick-thinking son checked the receipt and noticed that the last one was for Ed Gein, who had purchased antifreeze. So police immediately went to his farm, and needless to say, they were very, very unprepared for what they found. So they went through what they called the summer kitchen. That was the entry point for them. And Jamie, do you want to pull up the house so you can kind of get an idea of what the house looked like? Did I lose you?
Nope. Give me just a minute here.
Okay. Okay. So there was no electricity in the home, and it was really hard to see.
Ed, real quick, right?
This is Ed, yes. And see, he really didn't have what I would say a lazy eye. He had a dirty eyelid, is what I think, right?
Yeah, and not even one that would be like, like make fun of it. Just honestly, it looks like he might have just gotten punched in the eye and like cut and yeah.
When I smile for pictures, my eyelid does this. Please don't bully me. It's a problem that I have. And so anyway, here's the house, you guys. I mean, it looks like a super nice house. I mean, it's huge for the time, right? So anyway, there was no electricity in the home, and it was really hard to see. And the sheriff bumped into something hanging from the ceiling. And he put his flashlight, and he discovered that there was a woman who was hanging upside down. She'd been gutted, cleaned, and decapitated. And the sheriff noted the filth. And here's what they found. They took inventory of everything that they found. Guys, listener discretion is advised. I don't have pictures of this, so just be careful.
We don't? So, I thought there was a picture.
Not of the inventory. What else did I put on there? I forgot what I put on there. Oh, yes, this is the messy house. But so what they found in there, they found 4 noses, human bones and fragments, 9 masks of human skin, bowls made from human skulls, 10 female heads with tops sawed off, human skin coverings. Mary Hogan, if y'all remember her, she was the pub owner. Her head was in a paper bag. Bernice Warden's head was in a burlap sack. 9 outer female genitalia, skulls on his bedpost, organs in the fridge.
And 2 of those female genitalias were believed to be under the age of 15.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh, my. There was organs in the fridge. There was a pair of lips on a drawstring for a window shade, a belt made from female nipples, and a lampshade made from the skin of a human face. I did see those pictures, and
now that's just freaking creepy. I mean, we're grossed out by everything, but a freaking lampshade made out of someone's freaking face looking at me, that just drives me up the wall. I would just that's not I don't even know what to say, guys. I'm just telling you that is like the one. Everything is just more like creepy, or you know what I mean, like gross and just depravity, and I can associate all these other adjectives with it. But the one with the stinking face on the lampshade, that one is just like, okay, like how much more can you go down? Like you're already in the depths. Can you find a way to go deeper? And that's what that stinking lampshade is to me.
So the depths apparently have a basement because that's how far.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He went down.
I mean, you just can you look at me, like you just turn a lamp on and it casts a shadow, and this is like a freaking Edgar Allan Poe thing. You're casting the shadow of the face on your wall. You clean it, you stretch this, and do you have conversations with that thing at night? I mean, does it talk to you? Like, I'm sorry, I just that one is.
Let's go back to what was the purpose of the belt?
I guess were the nipples holes so you could put the little thing through?
I didn't see a picture of that.
I didn't either. Yeah.
So I feel like he might have had a bone for interior design, maybe.
Maybe, okay, so just for a second, Sandy, like, okay, let's just think that this guy is not sadistic anyway. Okay, he killed 2 people, but for the most part, he's upcycling people's body parts for practical things around the house. Like, maybe he just was a little off. Maybe he was trying to start a trend and to see if we could really
embrace it
and make use of our dead instead of just letting them sit in the ground doing nothing.
I don't know.
I'm just
gonna go ahead and say that there is nothing that I can do to comprehend this. None of it makes sense to me. And then let's just, when I look at this picture, I can't even like, it makes me gag, honestly. Like, this is just absolutely insane.
Is that one of the like police officers in there or something?
Yes.
The guy.
And then the crazy part is his mom's room was spotless. Like hers was left intact. Like the day that she died, that was it. Like there was no trafficking. It was clean. It was just everywhere else that he trafficked that it was this bad. So
I'm surprised we don't see any human pieces in here, Sandy.
Well,
I'm just absolutely surprised. Hey guys, real quick, if you see right here, you notice Domino Sugar, they're still around. Okay.
Oh, I know. That's what I was like, that sugar?
Had to sweeten the deal somehow in that kitchen.
The only sweet thing in there.
What?
I said the only sweet thing in that house.
The only sweet thing there, yeah. Carrie Patton Jack says, upcycling body parts for uses around the house, like the leg lamp in a Christmas. So exactly, Carrie, exactly. It's very fragile up in there, okay?
That is funny. Oh my gosh.
Oh, man.
He did get arrested, and he did admit to shooting Hogan. And check this out. The sheriff became so upset by his confession that he slammed his head, and his confession became inadmissible. I mean, I could probably see you losing your shit, basically, knowing that happened. I mean, I can't imagine sitting there and remaining calm listening to that. And that's why I could never be a detective.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know. Yeah. There is a part of me that feels sorry for the guy, though. I'm like, he was beaten as a kid, a lot of unfortunate stuff as a child, and then here in jail trying to get a confession, then he's beat again senseless until, like, I'm like, can we just stop with the brain injuries, folks? Can we just stop? Like, if people are gonna go and do, yeah, like he's already got enough. Let's not make it worse. Let's not make it to the effect where we get him off on a good chance of, bad police behavior or bad parenting behavior. Like, good Lord, just chill from brain issue. You know what I mean? Brain trauma.
Yeah.
Whatever. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's so crazy, but I felt like that too. I'm like, I was like, dang, I mean, this guy's been through enough, but I mean,
yeah, I know. Yeah. It's like he's already bad enough. Let's not make it worse. I don't know how to describe that better, but that's all I got, guys. Sorry. Leave the brain alone.
Yeah.
Just...
So listen to this. So, and of course, I just assumed that the sheriff ended up suffering from PTSD because of this, and he died from a heart attack even before the trial began.
Man, that's crazy. That's so crazy.
And during the trial in 1957, Gein pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and he was taken to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane to be observed and evaluated. The people who worked at the asylum stated he was a model patient. He was described as polite, courteous, and he kept to himself. He was found fit enough to stand trial in 1968 when he was 62 years old. He was found guilty by reason of insanity and sentenced to a state facility for the rest of his life.
Oh, and I'm sure Sandy will be back shortly, everyone. But yeah, so he was sentenced for life there. And gosh, what do I talk about? I just was on my parapet a moment ago and decided to get off, and yay, Sandy's coming back. So sentenced in 1957.
I'm about to give up on technology. I really am.
It's been a bad couple of weeks for us, so I understand.
I'm just going to start doing this in Morse code. Maybe it'll come through.
You know what? So for future episodes, maybe you could send me your notes too. That way, in case like this, I can be like,
Yes, I'm going to start doing that. So where was I? Where did I leave
1957, he was sentenced to life, and I think that's what you said, right?
No, he was found fit enough to stand in 68 when he was 62 years old. And he was found guilty by reason of insanity and sentenced to a state facility for the rest of his life. And he died in 84 at 78 years old, and he was buried next to his mother.
Yeah. There was some story behind his, even after his burial. Like, I think they went back and so yeah, they put him in this. Oh, so here's the kicker with that though, everyone, is that he was buried with next to his mother in the same cemetery that he had been digging up graves out of and making things out of people's dead bodies. So the very same cemetery. I thought there was some weird irony to that. I don't know if that's divine retribution in a way, maybe, going back to the same. In my mind, I think in the spiritual world of things, he is being had there. Something, I don't know if however way you subscribe to things, but I think it is weird that he has to be buried in the same place where he disturbs so many people's graves himself. Yeah. And they never did figure out the exact number, so he said he killed. They got him. He killed 2 people. Right. They got him for 1, and they only did that because they're like, we wanted to make it cheap on the state, and we wanted to make sure we secured a conviction, which they did. But because of that, he never got tried for the other murder. And he also had said he didn't know how many people he killed, so they only attributed 2 deaths to him. There is a chance that he had more than that, though. But when they realized some of the pieces in the house, and then they correlated that with the graves that were disturbed, they realized that he was the one who had been taking who had been grave robbing, basically grave digging, grave robbing, whatever. And so the place where he was getting all those parts, that's where he was buried. And I think I read something later, and someone can cross-check me on this, but I think later on they had either restored or removed his grave marker in that cemetery. I don't remember what they said because I think
I read something like that.
Do you remember if it was removed it or restored it? I can't recall. Both are pretty extreme on both sides. And so in my mind, at least, you take someone's marker away, but I mean, he was pretty horrible, but then restoring it, that would just mean like, oh, you're going to get a lot of people to come visit his grave, like Sandy.
Well,
like
yeah, because
go visit his grave.
One of the things that they did is they ended up burning down the house mysteriously so people would stop visiting it.
There's a hint to some of this, right? Because Holmes's house got burned down last week, right?
Yeah. Because people just be trying to visit it a little more. And then another thing too that I found was they auctioned off his car to a carnival sideshow for $760, which would be equivalent to $6,000 today.
Wow. Someone got paid.
This is the car
Who was left to take that?
Yeah, so this is the car that he used to haul the corpses home.
Yeah. So Joanne says the crackle noise in the background. There's brujeria in there somewhere. Joanne that's trying to catch her. We don't know, but yeah. Brenda says the same. CPJ says I feel bad for him that he was laid to rest next to his mom. Anyone else? Yeah, I'm with you on that too, Carrie. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Just like with the whole brain trauma, as a child and then as an adult. So I feel you on that too, Carrie. I'm like, but the problem. You know what? Actually, how does that make sense? How did they know that she was hurting him and she was that way? But then they still put it. Maybe that was his crime, Carrie. Maybe that was part of the way that they were like, we are going to, carry out his crime through in the afterlife is by burying him next to his mom. We got you back, Sandy. So everyone's saying that they can hear some crackling noises, and so can I.
Okay. Well, I'm
I
just
told
going to
them
go ahead and hop off. I'm so sorry because I can hear the cracklings, and I apologize for my technology failures, guys.
We love you still, Sandy, despite all that.
Thanks.
Okay,
I'll get it
that's not the
together
big
one
thing.
day.
One day we'll figure it out. Well, everyone, go ahead and give your closing stuff, then, Sandy. Let's just.
Okay. Well, because I can still hear crackling. I don't know what all you guys can hear, but hey, guys, thanks, TC, for hopping on. Annie is still available for adoption. And next week, we're going to be talking sheet with my niece, Rain. So y'all stay tuned. Hopefully, we'll have a better connection. We're going to have to look at all of our stuff. But anyway, let's keep talking sheet, and we'll see y'all next week. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone. Happy Halloween, everyone. Be safe.
Happy Halloween.